Have you ever wondered where all the cartel movies and television series you watch get their stories from? Yes, Narco was great, but what if we told you that real-life stories and real-life drug lords inspired them? It turns out they actually were. So most of the gun violence and stuff you see on TV happened in reality. From Escobar to the Ochoa brothers, these cartel lords know how to rule the drug world, and all the billions that come with it. Welcome back to our channel, and today we'll be telling you all about the richest drug lords in the world. Let's get started. First up, on number 5 is Khun, who was a Shan drug lord and military leader who's well known as the Opium King. Khun grew to prominence back in the 1960s when he fled to Burma around the time of the Chinese Civil War came to an end. Khun started to organize a small military group of fighters that would eventually grow into an army that fought for the state of Shan. He later got involved with the opium business and eventually the trade of heroin, as he supervised the production and shipment of these drugs within Southeast Asia. Unfortunately for him, he was eventually indicted by the United States for his notorious drug operation, and then surrendered to the government of Burma in hopes that he would not be extradited to the United States. He was never really locked up and lived the remainder of his life in Rangoon. His net worth at the time was estimated to be around $5 billion. Wow. Up next, we have Jorge Juan David and Fabio Ochoa, the Ochoa brothers, who were members and co-founders of the Medellin cartel during the late 1980s. The Ochoa brothers were already in the business of producing and pushing cocaine before the Medellin cartel was formed, so it made sense for them to join forces with Rodriguez, Escobar, and others. The Ochoas were notorious for their hand in producing, distributing, and marketing the White Horse. Initially, the brothers were part of a cattle breeding family that did business with family restaurants. Their entry into the drugs business started during the 1970s, and their cartel was founded by Jorge Ochoa. During the peak of their operations, they were reported to have a combined net worth of an estimated $6 billion. The Ochoa brothers were involved in several indictments, arrests, and extradition attempts in various countries. However, by 1984, their power was so grounded that the cartel announced that each Colombian extradition would result in 10 killed Colombian judges. When their drug empire began to crumble, Jorge and Juan David eventually surrendered to the Colombian government, while Fabio was extradited to the US. Jorge was even listed in Forbes as one of the 20 richest men in the world. His personal net worth as of 1987 was estimated to be about $3 billion. Blood is thicker than water, and it seems like these brothers bled green. On number 3 is Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar, who's an Indian crime and drug lord from Mumbai. Kaskar is the founder and the leader of the notorious D Company, who's a crime syndicate in India. Back in 2003, he made the rank of global terrorist. Kaskar's organization oversees everything notorious, from drug smuggling to assassinations. He's believed to be responsible for the 1933 Mumbai bombings, and even made the 3rd spot on the world's 10 most wanted criminals list in 2011. Like that isn't enough, he's known to be a close friend of Al-Qaeda, and even the king of terrorism, Osama bin Laden, when he was alive. We know what you're thinking. They were like the Destiny's Child of terrorism. Kaskar's net worth is estimated to be around $6.7 billion, and is presently one of the most wanted criminals in the world. Kaskar has been charged with extortion, terrorism, murder, drug trafficking, and assassination counts. One controversial resume, don't you think? His present whereabouts are unknown, but some believe that he might currently be residing in the United Arab Emirates or Pakistan. It is believed that Kaskar controls Hawala, the money controlling system. Hawala is an informal value transfer system that depends on honorable cash movement within a network of money brokers. His organization handles operations in Africa, India, the United Kingdom, South Asia, the Middle East, and Western Europe. The United States Department of the Treasury has attempted to monitor his drug shipments and smuggling routes, and many efforts have been made to have Kaskar brought to justice in India. But he maintains Pakistani passports, and reports state that he might have moved his operations to the Pakistani-Afghanistan border. The D Company has even been connected to the Bollywood industry, as several movies and studios have been threatened, financed, and extorted by it. The movie Shootout at Guadala is about Cascar's organization and its influence. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was a famous Mexican drug lord who took control of the Juarez cartel after killing his boss and leader of the cartel, Rafael Aguilar Juardo. Amado Carrillo Fuentes became known as El Señor de los Cielos, which means the Lord of the Skies, because of the large fleet of Boeing 727 jets he used to transport cocaine into the United States regularly. Fuentes was a nephew of Ernesto Fonesco Carrillo, well known as Don Neto, who was leader of the Guadalajara cartel. He got his start in the drug business under the supervision of his uncle Ernesto, and eventually brought in his brothers and his son Vicente Jos Carrillo Levea. Amado was initially part of the Guadalajara cartel and was sent to Ojinaja, Guadalajara to watch over the cocaine shipments of his uncle Ernesto and to learn more about border operations from Pablo Acosta Villarreal, also known as the Ojinaja Fox, and Rafael Aguilar Juardo. He then worked with famous drug lord Pablo Escobar and the Cali cartel to smuggle drugs from Colombia to Mexico and the US. He even worked with El Chapo, the Beltran-Leyva organization, and the Arellano Felix family. In his last days, he was tracked by the United States and Mexican authorities. In order to evade them, he tried to change his appearance by undergoing extensive plastic surgery. The operation, which took place in July 1997, was not successful, and he ended up dying from surgical complications from either medication or a malfunctioned respirator. He had his bodyguards with him in the operating room to watch over his surgery, and by November, the two surgeons who operated on him were found dead. Their bodies had been tortured and then placed in steel drums filled with concrete. What a gruesome sight. He was estimated to have been worth $25 billion at the time of his death, making him one of the wealthiest drug lords ever to live. However, a few theories say that he's still alive. Yikes, talk about a plot twist. Carrillo was given a huge, lavish and expensive funeral in Guamachalito in Sinaloa. Years later in 2006, Governor Eduardo Bors asked the federal government to bring down Amado's mansion in Sonora. For years, a fictionalized version of his life starring Rafael Ameo called The Lord of the Skies was aired in Telemundo. One big man. Born Pablo Emilion Escobar Gaviria, Escobar is well known as the most notorious and wealthiest drug lord that ever walked the earth. Given the title The King of Cocaine, the notorious narco-terrorist is the richest criminal in history, having garnered an estimated net worth of $30 billion by the time he died, equivalent to $64 billion as of 2021. Escobar was from Rio Negro, but grew up in Medellin, Colombia, and he's popular for establishing the first successful routes for smuggling cocaine leading into the United States. His drug cartel monopolized a train of cocaine into the US in the 1980s and 1990s. He was a member and founder of the Medellin cartel, known to have smuggled about 80% of the cocaine sold in the United States. Escobar earned his King of Cocaine title for having a personal income of over $21.9 billion per year. For a while, Pablo Escobar was a university student in Medellin, but dropped out to sell contraband cigarettes, fake lottery tickets, and steal motor vehicles. Escobar's infiltration into the United States created a high demand for cocaine. By the 1980s, it was reported that he led monthly shipments of around 70 to 80 tons of cocaine into the US from Colombia. Due to this, he quickly rose to become one of the wealthiest men in the entire world, but continuously had battles with rival cartels in Colombia and abroad. His cartel was known for massacres and murders of police officers, locals, prominent politicians, and judges, making Colombia the center of murder in the world. During the peak of the Medellin cartel and his drug empire, the cartel was bringing in over $60 million per day. He fought very hard and violently against the Colombian government from the 1970s right through to the 1990s and was waging a bloody war. However, he was famous for building houses and football fields in Colombia. Making the city the murder capital of the world just didn't cut it. Escobar was later killed during a raid in 1993 by the Colombian National Police when he was just 44 years old. Pablo Escobar left behind a very controversial legacy because while several folks denounced the bloody nature of his crimes, he was still seen as a Robin Hood figure by several others in Colombia. After all, he provided several amenities to the poor and needy. Who doesn't like a generous drug lord, right? His death was mourned by many, and over 25,000 folks attended his funeral. Also, his private estate, Hacienda Nápoles, has been transformed into a theme park. His eventual life was equally served as inspiration and has been dramatized widely in television, film, and even music. He might have been a criminal, but he was one smart man. Well, that's all for today's video. What do you think of these notorious drug lords? Make sure to air your views in the comments section below, and we hope you enjoyed watching the video.